What is it that we want for our life? Ultimately, to be happy, to feel good and feel joy, have connection with ourselves and with other people, and live a life that is in alignment with who we are at our essence. Now, what gets in the way of that is, for many, it is a lack of self love, that we spend more time in the space of anger, judgment, fear, as opposed to living in that space of who we are at our essence, where our passion is, where we feel good about ourselves, where we actually like who we are and enjoy who we are. So, before I dive into that, just the quick distinction between self love and self care is that self care are things, actions that we might take to nurture ourselves, like go and get a manicure and a pedicure, spend time walking in nature, time on the beach, just sitting and relaxing, laughing with friends, taking a bubble bath, enjoying a cup of tea. These are all what I consider self care. Self-love is comes in at a deeper level. And this is where the impact of whether we feel happiness and joy or anxiety and depression, whether we feel a love for others or an anger or a judgment towards ourselves and to others. The value of this is that when we come from a place of self love, this is where our health and our energy and our well being truly elevates. This is where we're living at that vibrational level where our life flows, where we feel this sense that we're living in alignment with who we are at our essence, in alignment with our core deep values. So, how do we find self love? Well, the first thing is it's a willingness to feel your feelings. Now, we talk about the importance of embodiment, connecting to ourself, feeling the feels. There's practices like somatics and yoga and Pilates. And so while we know it feels good, understanding at a deeper level of truly what's happening inside of yourself and your nervous system, such as that when we practice these different practices as regularly, we just notice that we feel happier, we feel more at peace. So, say, for example, you feel anxious. We don't like that feeling of feeling anxious. And so we tend to disconnect, we tend to judge ourselves, maybe define ourselves based on others' approval. Ultimately, what we're doing when we're disconnecting from what it is that this anxious feeling is we're actually abandoning ourselves. It's self-abandonment. And when we abandon ourselves and disconnect with who we are at our essence, we start to live in this space of conflict and putting the responsibility of how our life goes more on the external of what the external world thinks or what we think the external world thinks of us, than really tapping into our feelings and being fully responsible for how we feel. So when we get back into our body and we learn to take responsibility for the feels that we have, the difference is when we do things like get mad, slam doors, we have knee-jerk reactions, we blame others, maybe we overconsume alcohol or we overeat. These are all ways that we are not taking responsibility for our feelings. When we make the decision to feel our feelings, they actually tell us everything that we need to know. They tell us, are we moving in the right direction? Is something that's not working in our life not working because we're not in alignment? In my program, there's a 5-day challenge that's coming up, July 24th to 28th. We're going to talk about how to read your body when your body is saying yes or when your body is saying no. So when we talk about self-love, what happens when we aren't listening to the body in the long term, what happens is the pain that we experience from self-abandonment is truly robbing us of living the life that we truly want. So we're never quite feel happy. We start to feel this anxiousness. We start to feel frustrated. We feel like we don't have control over our lives, and we start blaming the external world for our lives not working. When we're willing to step into acknowledging our feelings, it does take courage. But when we start to allow the feelings, We don't think of them as good or bad. We just notice the feeling. We as humans are here to experience the full spectrum of feelings, from grief to sadness to anger. That is where we root, just like the great oak tree needs to root in order for it to grow. When we experience the depths of feelings of the sadness and grief and sometimes frustration, is that it gives that distinction of when we're feeling joy and happiness and love and connection. Remember, at the depths of all of these feelings is that love is the thread. And the fear of love can have us feel vulnerable. It can be unfamiliar to some. And this is when we tend to go into that protective personality. We let the ego drive the show. And then we start to notice maybe we don't feel as well. Health problems start creeping in. We're feeling like we want to pull back from life rather than lean into life and get curious. So in order to heal, we must be willing to feel. The next piece to really connecting into self-love is to do what we call breathe into your heart and be open to learn about loving yourself. We cannot connect to guidance, that is our higher superpower, when we are in judgment. So what we do instead is we feel something. We might say, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm frustrated today, or I'm feeling sad. And then we would go inside with the curiosity in a place of love and compassion and just ask that inner child, because often it's the inner child that's talking to us. And we would just ask the question like, what is it that you're trying to tell me? What is it that I need to know? What is it that I'm doing or not doing that's having you knock on my door with feelings of being anxious? So we go inside, ask the inner child, what is it that you're telling me? Because it's your body communicating that somewhere something is out of alignment. It's looking for your attention so that you can be aware and make the shifts just to come back into that alignment, get back on the road that is perfect for you and how you want to live. When we're feeling these feelings of anxiety, anxiousness, depression, anger, fear, it really is your body just saying, knock, knock. Hey, yo, you're ignoring me. You're putting pressure on me. This is that inner child saying, of course I'm angry. You're abandoning me. You're judging me for not being good enough. And when we are judging ourselves for not being good enough, it's our ego. It's that wounded self that's telling your soul, I'm anxious because you're not good enough. But guess what? It's all a lie. So when we go into our body, the invitation is to go deeper and to come in with that curiosity. You see, the role of your ego or your protective personality is to keep you safe. And so we can start to question, well, why? What is it that you're protecting me against with all of this self-judgment? What is it that we're trying to avoid? When I work with my clients in hypnotherapy, in a very gentle, loving, compassionate way, we get you into this beautifully relaxed state that helps you to go back to the root cause of why we're anxious when we go swimming, why we're anxious in a crowd, why we want to avoid certain things, because we maybe had this experience when we were younger. We may not even consciously remember it, but it's living in the subconscious, which causes that protective, oh, don't do that, don't put your hand up, don't speak out loud, don't speak your truth. Instead, you're just going to keep quiet, keep quiet, keep quiet. And what happens inside our bodies, it grows and it festers until one day, boom, it comes out. And it can come out in an anger burst that's inappropriate. It can come out in compromising our health, our well-being, and robbing us of our joy. So what we want to be doing is being open to learning from our guidance. So if the judgment is, I'm not good enough, the question to ask back is it true? Is it true that I'm not good enough? Is it true that other people have authority over you? So then asking is, what is most loving to me? Showing up as a loving adult. An example is eating healthy food. That's a higher vibration than unhealthy food. So when we're letting the ego or the protective personality guide us, we might just say, screw it, I'm just going to eat those chips or have that ice cream or drink a bottle of wine at night. When we come from a place of self-love and knowing, hey, I am good enough. Saying I'm not good enough or I'm not smart or I'm not worthy, is it true? How do I know it to be true? And then we start to engage in loving care, taking care of our body, going to bed before the magic hour of 10 p.m., planning healthy meals, fueling our body with deep connected love. You see, many of us don't have a role model on self-care. So we must go to our inner guidance, our own higher power, and that would be our feelings as our role model, learning to listen in. We ask and we receive. The information is always there for you. So I've already touched on this, but when we are acting in self-love, what we're doing is we are taking what we call loving action. Taking loving action in ways that you've been guided to do. This is how when we go into our body and we feel resistance. So even as you sit here listening, just say yes, 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 yes. And keep saying that and notice how that feels in your body. Most would describe that as maybe a forward-leaning energy. They may notice that the heart opens, the shoulders relax, the belly softens. We feel a sense of lightness. And then we say no, 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 no. And we may feel a falling back. We may feel a tension, a constriction, a closing of the chest, a tightening of the throat, a constriction in the belly. So when we start to understand how our body is communicating to us, that is from where we act. We act within the yeses. We shift when we get a no. And then from there, we want to check in with ourselves again. As you've taken loving action, you may notice things like you feel lighter, you feel peace, you feel more vitality, you have a sense of energy. You start to experience the flow of oneness in your life. You see, and also what starts to happen is your outlook on others and how you see others shift. Because when we see ourselves for who we are at our essence, we are better able to see others of who they are at the essence. How you view others is really coming from what's going on in here. So if I'm angry, pissed off, I'm in a bad mood, I'm not well rested, I haven't put good food into my body, I start to get stressed and anxious, and I start to see people in a negative way. When I come from a place of self-love, being in alignment with who I am, my presence shows up as that, and people then, from my view, show up as that. And then that energy, it just magnifies and magnifies in the most beautiful way. So we start to fill ourselves up. We become open to be kind versus judgmental. And when we stop abandoning ourselves, we start to experience life from a place of love and connection, health, healing, and well-being. So I invite you to register for my free 5-day challenge, July 24th to 28th, and see how this work feels. Learn how to listen into the body. We use breath work, we use body testing, yeses and nos. We learn the difference between living from the protective personality versus living on the front side of the model from a place of deep love. And from there, we can start to manifest exactly what we want for our life. I invite you to step into this with a place of curiosity and an openness, because this is always available to and for you. Anyone who wants to heal and love themselves can do this by following the steps we shared today. Thanks so much for watching. Click the link below, and I would love to see you in this 5-day challenge and really support you in loving yourself loving others so that you can live a life that you love.